Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have Andrew Schulz, co-founder and chief growth officer of NoiseAware, the company focused on providing noise protection services. So welcome, Andrew. Super happy to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so why don't we start this interview by allowing our main guest to introduce himself. Maybe if you can share a little bit about you, about your background, maybe how you started the company.
So again, my name's Andrew. I'm one of the co-founders here at NoiseAware. Always found myself in the fun position of where hardware and software are solving interesting problems. And we actually started the company in 2015 when my co-founder and I met at a startup networking event here in Dallas. And he had recently started renting out Airbnbs that he owned in town, and very quickly ran into the problem where college kids were renting them and throwing parties in them. And I'm sure everyone's seen the kind of headlines associated with that unfortunate behavior. And I just happened to have the right background to build a sensor that worked for him. And then we found more people like him. And then here we are.
And that was back in 2015?
Started the company in 2015. We launched our product in 2019. So we went through a couple revisions. There's a hardware component to our product, which anyone who's in hardware can tell you that it's hard. It's not as fast as software iterations, but it does provide some benefits.
Do you have an estimated time? I mean, for how long did it take you guys in order to build this software?
Yeah, so the hardware, we went through 3 revisions. So we launched our first, let's call it alpha, in 2016. So actually within a couple months of starting the company, that really got us our first paying customers, got us a lot of feedback on how to build the service. Built a second version that was more scalable, but still not what we wanted to go to market with. And then ultimately we launched our third version, which had an indoor noise sensor and an outdoor noise sensor. And doing both of those is what ultimately took a little bit more time, is launching 2 hardware products at once. And then throughout that entire process, we were iterating on the software products.
And what will you say it was your first experience with investors?
I think my funniest story is our literal first investment to build our first 1,000 sensors. We're talking to this group of angel investors here in Dallas, and they're like, love this, we get the need. We want this to be really simple. We don't want to do a lot of legal back and forth. And so we had our lawyer put the documents together, and their response was the entire sheet had changes. It was just, they went from saying, this is going to be super simple to, I think they changed every sentence. And that took me a little while to calm down from. We joke about it now, but it was a rude awakening for me, someone coming from the engineering world to have that many changes to what was supposed to be a simple document, but just how it is.
Whenever I talk with CEOs and co-founders, and whenever they tell me their experience about how they actually started the company, everyone's telling me that it's really stressful, if we can put it like that, at some point.
Yeah, it's definitely a different level of stress. And once the company gets to a certain size, it's always amazed me how much effort it takes to keep not the business running, but the organization, all the legal stuff, finance, and all the back office stuff, which is just interesting.
And I'm actually super curious to ask you, I know that you went to school for electrical engineering. So what was that jump for you in order to be like, okay, I'm gonna found my own company, I'm gonna go into the finance world?
Yeah, a lot of mistakes. So this was actually my third company to start. The first one didn't really go anywhere, but taught me a lot of lessons. Second one, I was able to raise some money, taught me more lessons, most notably how painful it is to close down a company, which has been very informative, as whenever things felt off, I knew that, there's things that I have to go fix pretty quickly. But just making the jump, I don't know, I've always had this fascination of, again, having hardware, software, technology solve problems. And I guess I'm this interesting mix of my parents, where my my mother's the technical one and my dad's the entrepreneur, and I'm kind of just right in the middle. So
Okay.
I've just kind of leaned into it, and it's been a pretty wild ride.
Oh, so I'm pretty sure that your dad probably already gave you a lot of advice starting your own company, right? I mean, since the very first one.
Yeah, my parents have actually been very helpful, from anything from sales tactics for my dad, or how to manage people for my mom, and it's definitely been a family affair for sure. And they've just been wonderfully supportive through all the ups and downs.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And you were mentioning that NoiseAware actually solves problems, just like any other product. And what would you say is the main problem that the company is solving right now?
Well, I think the very large niche that we kind of honestly stumbled into is there's a large portion of the real estate market where someone is renting a piece of property and there's no one on site to make sure they follow the rules. And luckily, most people, 95+% of people are following the rules. But that other 5% aren't necessarily doing that, and it can cause a lot of problems for the rest of the community. This just happened to be a problem the Airbnb community was facing kind of in their growth spurt from like 2014 to 2017. There's just a ton of headlines about party houses. Cities like Austin, Texas, were actually banning short-term rentals. So saying nobody can put their properties on Airbnb. And so there was just a lot of turmoil. I grew up with my family staying in homes. Like, that's how we went to the beach, and that's how I, hung out with my family. So it was an industry I cared about. And then I was able to take kind of my hardware, software, signal processing background to try to find this happy medium in between the community's, right to a quiet enjoyment of their property and the homeowner's right to kind of do whatever they want with it.
Did you get any sort of feedback, from the customers? Like, were they concerned about, I don't know, maybe privacy or something like that, for example, Alexa?
Yeah. So privacy was and still is the number one concern every customer has. Luckily, it was one of the kind of earliest design constraints we put on ourselves, which is how can we build this sensor that can quantify a sound environment, and classify it either good or bad, but don't make any recordings, don't stream anything, just treat sound like a thermometer would temperature, right? Just a number in time that you can't get really any other context from. And so that kind of started the company, and I think it served us incredibly well, where other products like, any of the home assistants or anything that is Alexa enabled, I think it's been pretty widely shown in the news that they can't be trusted, right? They are recording, they have people offshore listening to all the clips, and it's, you just really don't have any control over what's happening in your home with all of that data.
What would you say it has been the biggest technical challenge that you guys have managed to solve since you started the company?
I would say manufacturing, just as in general. The software we have is, outside of the algorithms that we've developed in-house to kind of provide our service, which we're always improving. The infrastructure, luckily we live in a world where you don't have to have your own servers on site, and a lot of these tools are just kind of freely available. But there's not that same infrastructure on the manufacturing side. I think that's where Dallas has actually been quite a benefit for us, as being the place where we founded. The first 5,000 or 7,000 sensors we built here locally. We used our connections here to find our next manufacturer we can scale with, and so on and so forth. Building a product that you can scale efficiently with is, far more difficult than your consumer products on the shelf makes you think it is.
And was it hard in order for you to find the customers, like the product market fit?
Yes and no. We've stayed more B2B. So there's actually a very large property management network, both in the kind of vacation rental world, the multifamily world, and the hotel world. And so we've focused on the businesses where sales cycle is longer, right? Because there's a lot more involved in their process, but it's much more sticky. We sign multi-year contracts. And so I think that's served us really well, especially, through, the pandemic times, where There was a lot of turmoil in the hospitality space. Luckily, I think our space recovered quite quickly as everyone learned that now they can work anywhere. And so having those kind of contracts in place mainly shielded us from that, from a lot of the downsides there.
And what kind of questions do you get from most of your customers? Like, let's say that I'm your first customer and I have tons of questions. What would you say it's the most frequent one?
Well, you already answered privacy. So privacy is always number one. I love working with our customers because they do care a lot about their guests, making sure they have the best experience. So that's generally where they start. And then second, on the flip side of that is, can somebody unplug the device? And so the answer to that is they can, but we have special circuitry that'll actually detect if it's been unplugged versus the Wi-Fi goes out or the power goes out. And then the third question is generally around, so what do I do when the sensor goes off? And we have a whole part of our service where we can actually message guests, politely ask them to quiet down, and that solves issues 95% of the time within 30 minutes. And so once you get to that point in the customer conversation, we're solving this existential problem for them, and 95% of the time we're solving it completely automatically for them. So that's the top three questions.
Wow, that's super interesting. I had no idea. Okay, so you can actually like chat with the customer, or is it just a notification like, hey, you're being super loud?
It's just a notification. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a polite reminder that you're staying in some place that does have rules. There is a community around you, so we'd prefer that you act like a neighbor, if you will.
What would you say it's next for NoiseAware in the next couple of years?
Well, I think the hospitality world in general is adopting technology at the fastest rate in history. And so for us, I think we just want to stay ahead of that. We want to help our customers run their businesses more efficiently. And ultimately, if we can do that, we allow them to spend more time on providing amazing guest experiences, which for anyone in hospitality, like that's what they would prefer to spend all their time on. So I think we just want to stay ahead of the curve and then help our customers run efficient businesses and make their guests happy.
I know that you guys were around when the pandemic hit. So did you have any, challenges when it comes to the procurement process, maybe building hardware?
Actually, we haven't. Because of the privacy constraint, we kind of really took to heart early in the company's history. That's also allowed us to rethink how we develop our circuitry, where at least my perception is a lot of consumer electronics startups kind of throw everything they can into a product, and they want to add all these features later. And where we've actually gone the other direction is, how simple can we make it so that we can confidently stand on our privacy claims and guarantees. And that's also allowed us to use more off-the-shelf parts, commonly available parts. And so honestly, we haven't had any issues with supply chain. I think we've been remarkably fortunate. So I hope, I'll knock on wood and hope that continues. But so far we've been insulated from it.
And the last but not least, do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs starting on this tech world?
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is try to have your first customer before you spend too much time and effort on product. Make sure that you're building it with your customers and you have their feedback through every stage of the process, even at that first stage.
And thank you so much for being here. Do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you? Where can people follow you or the company?
Love everyone. Just check us out at NoiseAware.com. And I think it's all NoiseAware.com for all of our other social media handles.
And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one, directly on our website, ControlHub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, for sharing everything about the company, and for sharing your helpful advice.
Well, thanks so much for having me.